In the depths of medieval history lies a tale of extraordinary resilience, the story of peasants who faced nature's harshest challenges with remarkable ingenuity. Tonight, we'll drift into slumber, exploring how these unsung heroes survived winter's icy embrace, armed with nothing but creativity and determination. As you settle in, letting the gentle rhythm of your breath slow, imagine yourself transported to a medieval village. While nobles enjoyed their warm castle halls, ordinary folk faced a different reality, one where each winter brought a test of survival that would make our modern inconveniences seem trivial. Close your eyes and picture yourself in a humble dwelling, a simple hut where walls whisper ancient tales of endurance. Built from woven sticks and earthen daub, these homes stood like determined sentinels against winter's assault. The walls, though crude by today's standards, showcased medieval ingenuity, a mixture of mud, straw, and yes, animal dung. Nature's own insulation, keeping precious warmth from escaping into the bitter night. In the deepening twilight, shadows dance across uneven walls as a modest fire struggles to warm the space. The wind outside sings its ancient lullaby, finding every tiny gap in the structure. Those fortunate enough to claim a spot near the hearth might find some comfort. Others huddled together, sharing what little warmth their bodies could generate. Clothing told its own tale of resourcefulness. No fine silks or warm furs graced these bodies. Instead, layer upon layer of coarse wool, each garment a testament to careful preservation and necessity. These simple garments, often perfumed with the earthy scent of sheep and smoke, became armor against winter's bite. Sleep came on beds that were little more than sacks filled with autumn's dried grass, each rustle a reminder of nature's humble provisions. Winter nights posed more than mere discomfort. They were battles for survival. The very young and elderly faced the greatest peril as temperatures plummeted. Each sunrise brought quiet celebration, marked perhaps by nothing more than a morning meal of whatever stores remained from autumn's harvest. Such was life in medieval winters, a testament to human adaptability. While we might shiver at a drafty window today, medieval peasants crafted entire lives within homes that were little more than shelters against the elements. Their walls, though simple, told stories of innovation, wattle and daub construction, where clever hands wove barriers against winter's fury, using Earth's own materials as their shield. Above these resilient souls stretched thatched roofs, their golden straws gradually darkening under winter's touch. Time and weather would test these simple coverings, sometimes allowing uninvited guests, both precipitation and wildlife, to join the household. Windows, when present, were modest openings draped with animal hides or wooden shutters. Glass, that precious commodity, remained a luxury even the local lord might struggle to afford. For peasants, an intact hide covering their window during a blizzard was fortune enough. Picture the humble floors of these medieval dwellings, nothing but earth pressed firm beneath weary feet. When winter rains came, the ground would weep moisture, transforming homes into misty, damp chambers. Each footstep across this frozen terrain felt like treading on nature's own icebox, as cold crept in from every direction. But medieval peasants, masters of adaptation, found clever ways to survive. They wove protective barriers of moss between gaps, stuffed weathered cloth into drafty spaces, and discovered that sheep's grease, when rubbed into walls, could keep winter's fingers at bay. Beneath their feet, the battle for warmth continued. Like careful gardeners of comfort, peasants would lay thick carpets of straw across the ground. When fortune blessed them with enough, though the straw started as a cozy barrier, time would flatten and dampen it. Some clever souls turned to rushes, layering fresh stems atop the old biz, created an ever-growing cushion that, while questionably fragrant, hosted its own miniature world of decomposing matter and tiny inhabitants. Sleep brought its own challenges. Their beds, simple wooden frames cradling nests of straw or hay, were less about rest and more about survival. Through long nights, sleepers would shift and turn, a dance with numbness and frost. Celebrating each morning, they woke with toes still wiggling and fingers still flexing. But in every medieval home, one hero stood against winter's siege: the hearth. This sacred space, this heart of flame, wasn't just a fire pit. It was their shield against darkness and cold. No grand stone fireplace graced these humble homes. Instead, imagine a simple circle of stones cradling precious flames, while wisps of smoke painted the air like ancient spirits dancing. These homes rarely boasted chimneys. Smoke would find its own path to freedom, through roof holes, wall cracks, or sometimes just lingering like a drowsy guest. While not ideal for breathing, this smoky veil served as nature's pest control, keeping unwanted critters at bay. Think of it as medieval multitasking, warming the space while fumigating it. The hearth was more than just warmth. It was the medieval equivalent of our modern living room. Here, families gathered to share tales, whisper gossip, or simply watch flames dance their eternal ballet. When sunset stole the light, the fire became their companion, their entertainment, their comfort in the darkness. Maintaining this precious flame wasn't just a chore, it was sacred duty. Letting the fire die meant inviting winter's icy embrace into your home. No simple match could rekindle these flames. It required flint, steel, patience, and perhaps a prayer or two. Every family member played their part in this eternal vigil, feeding the flames, watching embers, adding precious fuel. It was an endless dance between human will and winter's determination to extinguish their hope. The hearth, that humble beacon of warmth, stood between life and death in medieval winters. Like a faithful guardian, it fought back the bitter cold with its gentle flames, even when those flames danced uncertainly in the darkness. For medieval peasants, letting the fire die was a fate more terrifying than an empty ale barrel. For when the flames flickered out, winter's icy fingers would creep through the home with silent, deadly determination. Without modern conveniences like matches or lighters, rekindling a fire in the depths of winter became a delicate dance with fate. Picture yourself in the pitch darkness, fingers numbed by frost, carefully striking flint against steel. Each spark was precious as gold, each ember a treasure to be protected. The process required not just skill, but patience and a whispered prayer to whatever deity might be listening. But medieval ingenuity prevailed through a practice known as fire banking, a sophisticated art of preservation passed down through generations. As night descended, families would carefully nestle their fires, dying embers, within a protective blanket of ash. Like a mother tucking in a child, they would ensure these glowing seeds of warmth remained safely dormant until dawn. Success meant greeting the morning with a gently stirring flame. Failure meant facing the bitter task of starting anew in the frozen dark. This sacred art of fire banking carried its own folklore and family traditions. Each household held their secrets close, some swearing by bone-dry ash, others claiming that slightly damp ash held the warmth better. Debates over proper banking techniques could spark heated discussions that rivaled the warmth of the fires themselves. When wind howled through the cracks, or an errant animal threatened the precious embers, families would take turns through the night, maintaining their vigil over this lifeline of warmth. As temperatures plummeted, medieval households discovered that survival meant abandoning modern notions of personal space. Entire families, along with any nearby relatives, neighbors, or even passing travelers, would huddle together in the warmest corner of the house. This intimate arrangement wasn't about comfort or choice. It was about survival, pure and simple. The goal was elegantly basic. Wake up alive, not freezing. These nightly gatherings transformed homes into what one might poetically call a tapestry of shared warmth. Children nestled between parents like pups in a den. Grandparents added their wisdom and warmth from the outer layers, and unexpected guests were welcomed into the living quilt without hesitation. The lucky ones claimed the coveted middle spots, where body heat converged like a natural furnace. The less fortunate guarded the edges, their bodies serving as human shields against winter's relentless assault. As night fell, sleeping arrangements became an intricate dance of survival. Moving carelessly could disrupt the delicate balance, sending someone, perhaps dear Aunt Maud, into winter's icy embrace near the wall. The shared straw mattress, bearing the weight of generations, slowly compressed beneath its precious human cargo. While the aromatic qualities of such close quarters left much to be desired, survival trumped comfort in these trying times. Medieval wisdom dictated precise arrangements for nighttime warmth. Like careful strategists, families positioned their strongest members as living barriers against the cold, while infants and elderly found sanctuary in the warm center of this human nest. These long winter nights, though born of necessity, fostered deep bonds as families shared stories and songs beneath their woolen shields against the cold. The medieval household extended beyond mere human occupants to include an unlikely assembly of winter companions. Livestock, cows, goats, pigs, and chickens became essential members of this thermal community. Their presence wasn't mere eccentricity. Each animal contributed vital warmth to the poorly insulated dwelling. This arrangement served dual purposes, preserving precious body heat, while deterring potential thieves from claiming your valuable goat. As darkness descended, these humble dwellings transformed into living furnaces of warmth. Chickens claimed their roosts in shadowy corners, while pigs settled near the precious hearth. Cows, those great generators of heat, stood sentinel along the walls, methodically chewing their cud with the air of permanent residence. The resulting atmosphere was far from pleasant. Imagine the pungent confines of a crowded carriage, but amplified by the presence of various farm animals, all sharing one space through the endless winter nights. Medieval peasants developed a remarkable tolerance for their aromatic environment, understanding the fundamental equation of survival. More warm bodies meant greater chances of seeing spring. Each animal had its designated place in this careful arrangement. The massive cows, being nature's radiators, earned prime positions near the family. Goats, with their stubborn determination to be wherever they pleased, were granted closer quarters. Chickens found refuge in the rafters, while pigs claimed whatever space suited their fancy. This peculiar cohabitation brought its share of challenges. Peaceful slumber might be interrupted by an enterprising chicken selecting one's hair as its new roosting spot, or dawn might bring unexpected discoveries beneath one's feet. Yet, despite these tribulations, the cacophony of animal sounds, the overwhelming bouquet of scents, and occasional uncomfortable encounters with hooves, medieval families understood the harsh reality. In the war against winter's deadly chill, even the warm breath of a cow could mean the difference between life and death. In the depths of medieval winters, survival demanded not just warmth, but ingenuity in dressing. Peasants developed a sophisticated layering system that would put modern winter wear to shame. Picture, if you will, the careful ritual of donning layer upon layer. First, a simple linen undertunic, its rough fabric a constant companion against the skin. Next came the woolen tunics, one, perhaps two, if fortune smiled upon you, each adding precious warmth while gradually restricting movement. Their clothing strategy was beautifully simple, yet effective. Wear everything you owned, all at once. A heavy cloak, patched and worn, but invaluable, draped over shoulders like a protective embrace. The truly fortunate might possess a sheepskin, a treasure more precious than gold when winter winds howled. Feet found protection in ingeniously wrapped cloth bindings, stuffed into wooden clogs, nature's own insulation system. As winter deepened, these garments became more than mere clothing. They transformed into a second skin, each layer telling its own story. The impossibility of washing clothes in ice-locked streams meant that dirt and grime became unlikely allies in the fight against cold, creating a natural windbreak in the fabric's weave. Warmth came at the price of comfort, the constant companionship of smoke, sweat, and sheep's wool created an aromatic symphony that would challenge modern sensibilities. Yet this layer of accumulated life proved surprisingly effective, trapping precious body heat like a primitive Gore-Tex. Hats, scarves, and gloves weren't fashion statements, but rather armor against winter's assault. A simple woolen cap stood between life and frostbite, while homemade gloves, crafted from whatever scraps could be salvaged, protected precious fingers. Children, wrapped in so many layers they resembled walking haystacks, waddled through winter days like well-insulated warriors. In this world, cleanliness bowed to practicality. The medieval understanding of weatherproofing meant embracing the protective qualities of unwashed garments. Linen, when left unwashed, developed its own weather resistance as natural oils and environmental elements filled the gaps between fibers. This practical approach to winter survival, while perhaps unappealing to modern sensibilities, proved remarkably effective. When darkness fell, medieval beds offered their own unique comfort, though not in the way we might imagine today. Picture a bed frame supporting a large sack filled with straw or rushes. This rustic mattress, while far from plush, created a crucial barrier between sleeping bodies and the frozen earth below. Some households enhanced their bedding with aromatic herbs like lavender or rosemary, though these pleasant additions quickly surrendered to the general aromas of daily life. These beds, humble as they were, played a vital role in winter survival. The thick layers of straw, despite their tendency to attract uninvited guests of the six-legged variety, provided essential insulation. When families huddled together atop these rustling mattresses, they created their own pockets of warmth, a medieval version of central heating that proved surprisingly effective against winter's chill. Picture this: your home is a humble masterpiece of medieval architecture. Sticks woven together, daubed with mud, and held together by pure determination. In these dwellings, winter wasn't just a season. It was an uninvited guest that found every possible entrance. The wind didn't merely blow. It searched, probed, and infiltrated through countless cracks as walls shifted, mud crumbled, and thatch surrendered to gravity's gentle persuasion. The art of weatherproofing became a medieval dance of ingenuity. Imagine peasants, like skilled craftsmen, meticulously stuffing every gap with nature's insulation. Moss gathered from forest floors, straw rescued from the harvest, precious scraps of worn cloth, and even tufts of animal hair. The truly resourceful ones would annually paint their walls with a peculiar mixture of mud and dung. Nature's own weatherproofing solution. Above their heads, the battle continued. Thatch roofs, while abundant and affordable, played a game of hide-and-seek with raindrops. Creative solutions emerged. Cloth remnants became impromptu patches. Red bundles transformed into roof plugs, and sometimes, in whispered desperation, chunks of turf mysteriously migrated from nearby fields to plug stubborn leaks. Doors and windows were simple affairs, wooden planks that hung precariously by iron nails and sheer willpower. Window openings found protection under stretched animal hides or cloth soaked in fat, creating primitive but effective barriers against winter's icy breath. Yet, somehow, the cold always seemed to find that one overlooked crack, that single forgotten gap. As darkness descended, these medieval households implemented their nightly ritual, the shift system. This wasn't some complex rotation. It was survival, simplified. While half the family sought rest under threadbare blankets and scratchy hay, others maintained their vigil over the precious fire, their shadows dancing on rough walls as they patched drafts and tended flames. The hearth demanded constant attention, like a temperamental child. One moment of neglect could mean waking to cold ashes and the daunting task of reigniting life into dead embers. Family members took turns in this nocturnal dance, catching brief moments of sleep before being gently nudged awake to tend the flames, careful not to disturb the livestock that shared their living space. Even children, once strong enough to hold a stick, joined this ancestral duty. In these long nights, medieval peasants mastered the subtle art of survival breathing. They understood that each breath drawn through winter air was a delicate balance. Too deep, and the icy chill could settle in their lungs, inviting deadly pneumonia. Instead, they developed a technique of shallow, measured breaths through the nose, warming the air before it reached their lungs. Some clever souls even created primitive face warmers from their cloaks. Children learned these breathing lessons alongside their first words. Breathe gently, parents would whisper, teaching their little ones the delicate art of winter survival. Between these careful breaths, scratchy wool garments, and the intimate company of farm animals, medieval winters shaped character from an early age. The evening meal became another weapon against winter's assault. Understanding that a full stomach generated precious heat, families would prepare hearty feasts, thick, warming stews, rich with root vegetables, filling porridge, dark rye bread, and when fortune smiled, preserved meats. These weren't meals for pleasure. They were fuel for survival, designed to burn slowly through the long, cold night. Among their most ingenious innovations was the humble hay box, a simple wooden container lined with insulating hay, keeping food warm for hours. This same principle inspired their bedtime ritual of heated stones, carefully warmed by the fire, wrapped in cloth, and tucked beneath bedding like warm eggs in a nest. These stones, radiating their stored warmth through the night, became silent guardians against the creeping cold. Heated stones held both promise and peril in medieval homes. While a well-wrapped stone could offer hours of precious warmth, an improperly secured one might spark an unwanted blaze, and heaven help the poor soul who accidentally dropped one. Those stones could break toes as easily as they broke winter's chill. Yet, when properly managed, these humble, heated rocks became cherished companions through the bitter nights, preventing the dreaded morning icicle nose that plagued many a peasant's dawn. The hearth stood as the beating heart of every medieval home, a temperamental guardian whose flames meant the difference between life and death. Like some ancient ritual, families arranged themselves around this sacred fire in careful hierarchy. The most vulnerable infants, elderly, and the ill claimed the coveted spots nearest the flames, while haughtier family members created living walls of warmth around them, each body adding its heat to the collective shield against winter's bite. This nightly arrangement followed nature's own logic. The youngest and oldest, those precious bookends of life, needed the fire's embrace most dearly. The elders, carrying generations of wisdom in their weathered frames, and the infants, holding tomorrow's promise in their tiny forms, earned their places by the flames through necessity rather than privilege. Yet this prime positioning brought its own challenges. Too close meant risking singed eyebrows and smoky dreams, while too far meant wrestling with frost's icy fingers all night long. The fire's warmth played favorites, casting its golden glow in a narrow cone that turned the nightly gathering into a gentle competition for heat. Those fortunate enough to face the flames might find themselves half-cooked, half-frozen, like some peculiar human roast. The family's animals joined this nightly dance, dogs wedging themselves into any available warm spot, their tails becoming impromptu fire hazards, while chickens claimed their perches on warm hearthstones, nature's own feathered sentinels of the night. Each sound from the fire wrote its own lullaby, the soft pop of burning wood, the whisper of settling embers, each noise a small assurance of continued warmth and life. Medieval families drifted into uneasy slumber beneath this fiery guardian, their breath forming ghostly clouds in the darkness beyond the hearth's reach. Each inhale a reminder of their tenuous grasp on warmth and life itself. Winter survival in medieval times was never a solitary achievement, unless one yearned to become an ice sculpture by midwinter. Cooperation wasn't just beneficial, it was essential. Communities wove themselves together like a thick wool blanket, each thread supporting the others against winter's assault. A neighbor's dark hearth or missing smoke signals sparked immediate concern and action, driven by the understanding that tomorrow's frozen victim could be anyone. In this harsh world, even those who owed you a chicken earned a welfare check. Survival transcended petty debts and grievances. In the heart of medieval villages, an intricate web of care emerged like delicate frost patterns on a window pane. The community's most vigilant souls, young children with bright eyes and elders with weathered wisdom, became the unofficial guardians of winter survival. These watchful spirits noted every missing face at market, every too quiet chimney, every cough that echoed a bit too harshly in the bitter air. Like ancient sentinels, they kept their vigil without badges or ceremony, their only uniform, the determination in their eyes, and the sheep grazing nearby. When disaster struck and a family's hearth grew cold, the response was swift and decisive. Neighbors would appear like winter angels, bearing precious gifts of glowing coals wrapped carefully in cloth, or, better still, offering shelter within their own humble homes. Bodies pressed close in these crowded havens, but the warmth of shared humanity far outweighed any discomfort. As winter's icy fingers tightened their grip, the village's survival instinct deepened. Food stores became sacred treasures, shared with solemn care. Salted meats, precious grains, and vegetables preserved through autumn's bounty. Children, understanding the gravity of their role, became vital messengers, their small feet carrying warmth and hope from house to house in the form of embers, firewood, and urgent whispers of need. Though petty quarrels and ancient feuds simmered beneath the surface, disputes over wandering goats or borrowed cookware never truly forgotten. Winter's fierce embrace had a way of softening even the hardest hearts. In the face of nature's fury, old grievances melted like snow in spring sunshine. The village transformed into an unlikely family, bound together by the simple, stark truth that survival required unity. Faith wove itself through every breath of winter air, like silver threads in a tapestry. Medieval peasants did unsimply endure the cold. They wrapped themselves in layers of prayer as thick as their woolen cloaks. Each night, before surrendering to sleep beneath scratchy blankets, families would gather in the flickering firelight, their whispered prayers rising like smoke to the rafters, begging for one more dawn, one more spark of warmth, one more day of life. The saints became intimate friends in these desperate hours. Saint Blaise stood guard against the treacherous winter illnesses that could turn a strong throat to ice, while Saint Nicholas extended his protection far beyond gift-giving, becoming a shield against winter's merciless assault on humble households. Superstition and faith danced together in the firelight like ancient partners. Holy water blessed hearths against both evil spirits and bitter draughts, while doorways marked with blessed chalk became portals of hope, inviting warmth and fortune to cross their thresholds. Throughout the longest nights, blessed candles kept their sacred watch, their flames a defiant challenge to the darkness that pressed against thin walls, their light a reminder that even in winter's deepest grip, hope refused to die. Prayer was more than ritual, it was survival itself. Each night, huddled in the flickering shadows, peasants would whisper their humble bargains with heaven. Lord, see us through till morning, and I promise to share my last turnip, even with that neighbor who borrowed my spade last spring and never returned it. These weren't grand theological discussions, but intimate conversations born of desperate need. Their requests were beautifully simple: enough warmth to keep breath flowing, enough food to quiet hungry bellies, and just one more sunrise to prove winter hadn't won. These quiet prayers, carried upward by wood smoke and hope, became their nightly shield against the darkness. Yet winter's truth was harsh and unforgiving. Sometimes, all the prayers and clever solutions in the world weren't enough to hold back its icy grip. When winter claimed victory, it was absolute. Entire families would vanish beneath winter's white shroud, whole communities falling silent as snow piled ever higher. The Great Famine Winter of 1315 stands as a haunting testament to nature's cruelty. Endless rains drowned crops, livestock withered away, and the bitter cold transformed already difficult lives into a desperate struggle for survival. In their darkest hours, people turned to unthinkable measures, consuming leather, tree bark, and entails too terrible to dwell upon, even their fellow humans. A dying hearth wasn't merely unfortunate, it was often the first step toward tragedy. Come spring thaw, neighbors would sometimes discover entire families still embraced in death, as if trying to share their last whispers of warmth. Even the shelters themselves could become deadly traps. Heavy snow and relentless ice storms could bring a roof crashing down in the dead of night, a catastrophe that often meant certain death. Those lucky enough to escape faced an equally grim choice, attempting to wade through waist-deep snow toward uncertain refuge, knowing that nearby households might be too overwhelmed to offer shelter. The cold brought other silent killers. In cramped, smoke-filled homes, disease found fertile ground. Pneumonia and bronchitis stalked the weak, turning winter coughs into death sentences by January's end. Frostbite worked its quiet horror, claiming fingers, toes, and ears, leaving survivors marked with nature's cruel signature. These lost limbs became badges of endurance, silent testimonies that whispered, "Winter tried to take all of me, but I refused to let it." Perhaps most haunting was how death became an expected winter guest, not a shocking intruder, but a familiar presence that visited each season, wrapped in crystalline frost, choosing who would and wouldn't greet the spring thaw. Like shadows cast by their flickering hearths, this grim acceptance colored their days. Yet these medieval souls persisted, their spirits as unquenchable as the embers they tended. In their world, each breath visible in the frozen air was a quiet rebellion against winter's grip, each glowing coal a tiny flag of defiance. Looking back at these frost-kissed ancestors, their calloused hands, chilblained feet, and smoke-stained faces, we might be tempted to see only suffering. But beneath the surface of their hardship lay something remarkable, an extraordinary tapestry of human resilience and invention. Without our modern comforts, no thermostat to adjust, no down-filled coats, no memory foam to cushion their rest, they crafted survival from whatever materials nature offered. Their greatest luxury was simply the hope of seeing another dawn. Each humble innovation spoke of their resourcefulness under nature's siege. Beds stuffed with fresh hay, fires carefully banked to last the night, walls plugged with moss to thwart the wind's icy fingers. When confronted with winter's fury, they didn't merely endure, they evolved. These adaptations emerged from wisdom earned through generations of harsh lessons, passed down like precious heirlooms. Their villages weren't just collections of homes, but intricate networks of mutual support, where today's act of kindness might ensure tomorrow's survival. They understood viscerally that winter's challenge required not just individual grit, but the strength of community. Faith blossomed in their hearts, not merely from fear, but from an unquenchable wellspring of hope. Hope that whispered of warmer days ahead, of green shoots pushing through frozen soil, of life's eternal cycle continuing despite winter's best efforts to halt it. Through countless nights of huddled prayer and shared warmth, they didn't just survive, they laid the foundation for future generations to thrive. Their quiet victories over endless winters gradually transformed mere survival into the comfort we know today. Their legacy lives on in every warm hearth, every cozy blanket, every peaceful winter evening we enjoy. As you nestle into your warm bed tonight, listening to winter winds howl against double-paned windows, remember these nameless ancestors, the quiet heroes who transformed winter's challenge into humanity's triumph, one stubborn heartbeat at a time. Like whispers from centuries past, our tale begins with Anne Boleyn, not as the queen she would become, but as a girl born into modest nobility around 1501, whether at Blickling Hall or Hever Castle. Her first breaths gave no hint of the tempest she would one day unleash. Her father, Thomas Boleyn, was a diplomat weaving his way through court politics, while her mother, Elizabeth Howard, carried the quiet strength of ancient noble blood. In Tudor England's grand tapestry, an esberth was but a single thread, yet this thread would one day reshape the entire fabric of history. From her earliest days, Anne's spirit burned like a flame in still water. Her mind, sharp as winter frost, set her apart from her peers. Fortune smiled upon her when her family recognized this spark and sent her across the sea to continental Europe. In the Netherlands, serving in Margaret of Austria's court, young Anne began to unfold like a rare flower. There, amidst the glittering halls of power, she learned to dance with diplomacy and speak the silent language of court politics. But it was in the French court where Anne truly bloomed. Under the watchful eyes of Queen Claude and the brilliant Queen Marguerite of Navarre, she transformed from a promising English rose into something altogether more exotic. While other young ladies bent their heads over needlework, Anne wove a different kind of tapestry, one made of wit, charm, and carefully crafted influence. She learned to turn a phrase as skillfully as others turned a spindle, mastering the art of capturing hearts without seeming to try. When she returned to England in the early 1520s, Anne was like a foreign wind sweeping through a quiet garden. She carried herself with a grace that spoke of continental sophistication, yet beneath it ran the quiet ambition of her rising English house. Though not conventionally beautiful, even her admirers would admit, she possessed something far more potent: dark eyes that flashed with intelligence, a voice that sang with music and meaning, and movements that seemed to write poetry in the air. When Anne entered a room, the very atmosphere seemed to bend to her will. In an age when women's lives were often predetermined paths from cradle to grave, Anne dared to chart her own course. The power she had witnessed in European courts had taught her that a woman's mind could be as mighty as any sword. Though still young, clever, and untested, she carried within her the seeds of tremendous change. The girl who had left England as Thomas Boleyn's daughter returned as something more, a player in history's grand game, though few yet knew it. Her return to the English court was like the first flash of lightning before a storm. Among the demure English roses with their downcast eyes and soft voices, Anne blazed like a dark star, unpredictable, magnetic, impossible to ignore. Her raven hair and bold gaze marked her as different, while her quick wit cut through courtly pretense like a blade through silk. Even as she played her appointed role as maid of honor to Queen Catherine of Aragon, Anne's presence refused to be dimmed. She moved through court like a melody in a minor key, haunting, beautiful, and utterly unforgettable. Her graceful dancing, flawless French, and laughter that rang with unashamed joy drew all eyes to her. In the quiet corridors of power, tongues wagged and whispers flew about this remarkable Boleyn girl who dared to be different. Like a whisper in the shadows of history, a most intriguing dance began between King Henry VIII and the enigmatic Anne Boleyn. The king, whose court already sparkled with flirtations and secret romances, found himself utterly captivated by someone extraordinary. Anne, with her mysterious dark eyes and sharp wit, played a different game entirely. Where others rushed to please him, she dared to challenge. Where ladies swooned, she stood tall. Every refusal only stoked Henry's fascination, their courtship unfolding through passionate letters filled with yearning and frustration. When offered the coveted position of royal mistress, Anne did the unthinkable. She declined, demanding nothing less than a crown. The court held its collective breath at her audacity. Here was Catherine of Aragon, Henry's queen of 20 years, beloved by the people and protected by the mighty Holy Roman Emperor himself. Yet Anne, drawing from her experiences in European courts, where queens wielded power like delicate daggers behind painted fans, chose to reach for the impossible. In the flickering candlelight of palace corridors, she made a decision that would reshape history itself. What began as gentle, courtly love transformed into a storm that would shake England to its foundations. Henry's infatuation bloomed into obsession, and he proved willing to tear apart centuries of tradition to claim her. Standing in his way was not just Catherine, who remained steadfast and dignified, but the very pillars of medieval society, the church, foreign alliances, and ancient customs. In the face of this impossible situation, Henry crafted an elaborate justification. He declared his marriage to Catherine cursed because she had once been his brother Arthur's wife. The fact that the Pope had blessed their union years ago meant nothing now. Henry insisted his very soul hung in the balance, requiring an annulment. Meanwhile, Anne orchestrated her role with masterful precision. Like a skilled chess player, she kept Henry enchanted while maintaining careful distance. Each glance, each word was calculated, for she wasn't merely seeking marriage. She was maneuvering toward a throne. The court divided into whispered factions, some betting their futures on Anne's rise, while others rallied behind their beloved Queen Catherine. As the drama unfolded, the very foundations of medieval Europe trembled. Desperate messages flew to Rome, monarchs issued threats, and Henry's advisors watched in growing alarm as their king challenged increasingly powerful forces. Months stretched into years, and Henry's determination only grew. He hurled petitions at the Pope, sought legal loopholes, and gradually realized that even the Church would not yield easily. Despite Catherine's powerful allies, including Emperor Charles V, Henry pressed forward, defying every voice of caution. Their love story had transcended personal passion to become a catalyst for revolutionary change. Anne was unsimply winning a king's heart. She was unwittingly helping to steer England into uncharted waters, where the very relationship between church and crown would be redefined. In the quiet hours of night, as candles burned low in palace chambers, a game of unprecedented stakes continued to unfold, with no possibility of retreat. Like a slow-turning page in history's grand book, Anne Boleyn's patient gamble finally bore fruit after 7 years of careful maneuvering through scandal and diplomatic storms. In the quietness of January 1533, she and Henry VIII wed in secret, a daring choice that defied both Pope and tradition, as Catherine of Aragon remained Henry's wife in the eyes of Rome and Europe. By summer's arrival, Westminster Abbey witnessed Anne's transformation into England's crowned queen, its ancient stones bearing witness to a moment that would forever alter the kingdom's path. The coronation should have been her triumph, yet it carried undertones of uncertainty, like shadows in candlelight. London's streets held a mixture of celebration and concern. Some voices raised in cheer, while others murmured prayers for Catherine. Anne, with her continental grace and fierce spirit, swept into queenship like an autumn storm. Where Catherine had been England's gentle summer, Anne blazed forth in vivid hues, her sharp wit and bold manner as striking as the rich colors she wore. Each step she took through court left ripples of admiration and alarm in its wake. Though crowned and powerful, Anne walked a precarious path as delicate as morning frost. Everything hinged upon one crucial task: providing Henry with a son to secure the Tudor line. When her pregnancy was announced, hope bloomed like spring flowers in both their hearts. But September 1533 brought forth Elizabeth, a princess rather than the promised prince. Anne faced this disappointment with graceful determination, while Henry's love began showing the first tiny cracks of doubt. Yet Anne's influence still shaped the court like a master artisan, her family rising to new heights as she became the first queen to receive the sacred coronation oil, a privilege previously reserved for kings alone. Her power reached far beyond palace walls. Foreign diplomats sought her favor like stars seeking the moon's light, while courtiers realigned their loyalties to match her rising sun. Henry, transformed by her influence, led England away from Rome's ancient authority, establishing the Church of England with himself as supreme head, all to protect Anne's crown. But even as she stood at this pinnacle of power, storm clouds gathered on the horizon. Whispers grew in shadowed corners, and Henry's restless heart began to wander from the remarkable woman who had reshaped his kingdom. Though Anne had claimed the throne through wit and will, maintaining her position demanded more than these gifts alone. She had climbed higher than perhaps any woman of her era, but such heights brought their own dangers. The cracks in her carefully built world began to show almost as soon as the crown settled upon her dark hair. The pressure to produce a male heir weighed upon her like a heavy winter cloak. Her daughter, Elizabeth, though bright as a summer morning, was not the son Henry desperately desired. Time flowed like an unstoppable river as it endured multiple pregnancies, each ending in heartbreak, miscarriages that wore away at both body and spirit. With each loss, Henry's passion cooled further, disappointment carving deep valleys between them. Anne fought back with characteristic fire, but the very strength that had once captured Henry's heart now seemed to push him away. The king, who valued submission as much as beauty, grew weary of her fierce independence, the very quality that had first drawn him to her. Beyond the royal chambers, enemies gathered like shadows at dusk. Nobles, who had merely tolerated Anne's ascent, now openly plotted her fall. Catherine's loyal supporters viewed Anne as a usurper, while common folk whispered blame for England's religious upheaval. The storm that had swept Anne to power now threatened to sweep her away. Into this delicate balance stepped Jane Seymour, as gentle as morning mist, where Anne had been a blazing sunset. Like a whispered lullaby after a storm, Jane's quiet presence began to soothe Henry's restless spirit. Anne watched helplessly as her vibrant world began to fade, her desperate attempts to rekindle Henry's passion falling like autumn leaves in a winter wind. The king, whose love had once moved mountains, now dreamed of simpler shores. In the shadowy corridors of power, those who had once bowed to Anne now turned like leaves before a changing wind. Thomas Cromwell, her former ally, orchestrated a silent symphony of destruction. Like careful gardeners tending poisonous blooms, Anne's enemies cultivated rumors and whispers, watching them grow in the fertile soil of court intrigue. Her crown, won through wit and will, now sat heavy as lead upon her dark hair. The fall of Anne Boleyn reads like a medieval nightmare coming to life. through the mirror-bright halls of court, shadows began to lengthen. Cromwell, once her strongest supporter in reforming England's church, now saw her as a thorny rose that needed pruning. While Anne fought to protect the poor and challenge noble privilege, Cromwell sought the easier path of stability and royal favor. In Henry's heart, where passion had once burned bright as summer, now lay only the cold ashes of indifference. Friends melted away like spring frost, leaving an increasingly isolated. Her legendary charm, once as potent as French wine, now seemed bitter to a court thirsty for Jane's watered milk. In this dangerous game of shadows, Cromwell made his move with the precision of a master chess player, offering Henry an escape that would preserve his pride, not divorce, but destruction. The accusations that followed were dark as midnight, whispers of forbidden love, of treachery that would make angels weep. Anne, who had danced through court-like living flame, found herself painted as a demon, under torture's cruel hand, innocent flirtations twisted into damning confessions. Even her beloved brother George was caught in this web of lies. Yet the truth mattered little in a court where reality bent to a king's wishes. When they came for Anne, she fought like a trapped phoenix. Her pleas to Henry, once so powerful they could reshape kingdoms, now fell on ears deafened by suspicion. In the cruel spring of 1536, the Tower of London's gates opened like a hungry mouth to swallow its queen. Behind those ancient stones, Anne faced the bitter truth. She had become a prisoner in the very game she had once mastered. In the Tower's great hall, Anne faced her judges, men who owed their very positions to her rise, now eager to oversee her fall. The charges hung in the air like poison: adultery, incest, treason. In any other court, such claims against an anointed queen would have been unthinkable. But this was Henry's stage, and Anne's downfall was the final act he craved. Even in chains, Anne shone with the same fierce light that had once captured a king's heart. She met each accusation with razor-sharp wit and unwavering dignity. She reminded them of her sacred coronation, of her divine right as queen. But like petals scattered before a storm, her words had no power to change what was already decided. The trial unfolded like a dark pageant, each act more terrible than the last. Witnesses paraded forth with tales that contradicted each other like tangled threads, evidence as substantial as morning mist. Yet the ending was written before the first word was spoken. Anne, her brother, and the accused men were all found guilty. The sword, at least, would be a gentler death than the traitor's gruesome fate. When the verdict echoed through the hushed hall, Anne's composure remained unshaken, like a castle weathering a storm. Her face, though pale as moonlight, bore the same regal bearing that had once captivated a kingdom. With quiet dignity, she spoke her piece, accepting death's approach while entrusting her soul to God's mercy. As the heavy oak doors sealed her fate, the courtiers' collective sigh rippled through the chamber. Yet, in their haste to extinguish Anne's flame, they had unwittingly ensured her eternal glow in history's tapestry. Back in the Tower's ancient confines, Anne transformed from conquered queen to spiritual warrior. In those cold stone chambers, where countless others had crumbled, she stood resolute. Through long hours of prayer, her voice steady as cathedral bells, she maintained her innocence while seeking peace. Her thoughts turned often to Elizabeth, her precious daughter, hoping that somehow her sacrifice might cast a protective shadow over the child's future. Like a final jest at fate's expense, Anne's legendary wit sparkled even now. She comforted her weeping ladies with gentle humor, quipping about losing her head, a queen to the last, more concerned with others' tears than her own fate. Meanwhile, beyond the tower's walls, Henry VIII orchestrated his next marriage to Jane Seymour, his heart already turned from the woman who had once inspired him to move mountains. As twilight painted the tower's walls on May 18, 1536, Anne received word of tomorrow's dawn appointment with destiny. Through her final night, she knelt in prayer like a living statue, her whispers echoing off ancient stones as she forgave her enemies and perhaps sought understanding for her own mortal ambitions. Henry's one concession, a skilled French swordsman for a cleaner death, seemed a hollow comfort, more balm for his conscience than mercy for his queen. The next morning dawned pearl gray as Anne dressed with characteristic care, choosing a dark gray damask gown trimmed with fur, layered over a crimson kirtle. Each garment spoke of dignity, each color chosen with purpose. Her dark hair, once admired throughout court, disappeared beneath a simple cap as she prepared for history's final act. In the hushed courtyard of the Tower of London, under a sky as heavy as destiny itself, Anne Boleyn mounted the scaffold with the grace that had defined her reign. The gathered witnesses stood frozen, as if time itself held its breath. Her final words carried no bitterness, no accusations. Instead, she offered prayers for the king who had condemned her. The French swordsman's blade caught the morning light once, then fell in perfect silence. Thus ended the life of Anne Boleyn, queen, reformer, mother, legend. But her story was only beginning. In a somber twist of fate, Anne's earthly remains were hastily interred in an unmarked grave within the tower grounds. Without even the dignity of a proper coffin, the once radiant queen was laid to rest in a simple arrow chest. The woman who had worn England's crown now vanished into the whispers of history, like morning mist fading before the sun. But time, that greatest of storytellers, had other plans. From that cold, forgotten grave would spring an unexpected legacy that would change England forever. For in Elizabeth, an flame-haired daughter, once deemed a disappointment merely for being female, destiny had planted the seeds of greatness. Like a phoenix rising from her mother's ashes, Elizabeth I would emerge as one of history's most remarkable monarchs. The Virgin Queen, as she came to be known, carried within her the same fierce intelligence and unwavering spirit that had marked her mother's brief but extraordinary reign. Under Elizabeth's guidance, English art, culture, and global influence would blossom like spring flowers after a long winter. Anne Boleyn's story, far from ending with her tragic fall, echoed through time like a haunting melody. Her bold ambition had helped birth the Church of England, forever altering the spiritual landscape of a nation. Though her own crown had slipped away like water through desperate fingers, her true victory lay in the future she never lived to see. Through Elizabeth Anne's legacy, transformed from tragedy to triumph, proving that sometimes the greatest victories come long after the battle seems lost. As winter gave way to spring in the American colonies of 1770, a different kind of storm was brewing. The relationship between Britain and its colonial children had curdled like milk left in summer heat. Each new tax and regulation from Parliament landed like stones in a still pond, sending ripples of discontent across the Atlantic. The Stamp Act had struck first, demanding payment on everything from legal documents to playing cards, followed by the Townshend Acts, suffocating taxes on life's necessities: paper, glass, paint, Like autumn leaves caught in a gathering wind, colonial frustration swirled higher with each passing month. Their voices rose first in measured tones, carefully worded petitions, eloquent pamphlets, formal protests from colonial assemblies. Samuel Adams and John Dickinson wielded their pens like swords, filling newspaper pages with passionate pleas for liberty. But as seasons turned and Britain's deaf ear became more apparent, something darker began to take root. The bitter realization that their mother country viewed them not as beloved children, but as possessions to be managed. The colonists' hope flickered like a candle in a drafty room. When Parliament repealed the Stamp Act after their protests, it seemed the flame might steady. But each small victory was quickly smothered by new demands, new taxes, new wounds to colonial pride. The issue transcended mere coins and crowns. It struck at the very heart of what it meant to be free. These were not just taxes, they were chains, binding colonists to decisions made by men who had never set foot on American soil. In this gathering storm, Boston emerged as lightning's favorite rod. The Sons of Liberty, secretive as shadows but bold as thunder, grew in strength and numbers. The city's cobblestones ran red with the blood of the Boston Massacre in 1770, when British muskets turned protest into martyrdom. Trust, once broken, proved as fragile as spring ice. By 1773, the colonies balanced on a knife's edge, waiting for the final push that would send them tumbling into open rebellion. That push came wrapped in paper and wood, simple crates of tea that would change the world. Parliament, in what history would record as a fatal miscalculation, passed the Tea Act of 1773. On its surface, the law seemed almost generous: cheaper tea for all, courtesy of the British East India Company. The price cut appeared like a peace offering, a few pennies discount on life's small luxuries. Yet beneath this honeyed surface lurked a bitter truth. For the issue had never been about the cost of tea, it was about the cost of freedom. The Tea Act maintained the despised tax, a small sum that carried enormous weight. To accept this tea, even at its reduced price, would mean bowing to Parliament's authority to tax the colonies without their consent. For Americans who had spent years fighting for their rights as English citizens, this was equivalent to placing their own heads in a noose. News of the Tea Act raced through colonial streets like wildfire through dry grass. Merchants saw their livelihoods threatened by a crown-sponsored monopoly. Patriots recognized the bitter medicine hidden in this spoonful of sugar. Parliament still claimed the right to rule colonial lives from across an ocean. In Boston, where the wounds of the massacre were still fresh and economic hardship had left tempers raw, the reaction burned, especially hot. This wasn't just another tax. It was a trap baited with leaves of tea, and Boston refused to be caught. Like a gathering storm, refusing the tea transformed into a sacred oath of liberty. Meeting halls echoed with passionate debates, while newspaper columns blazed with revolutionary spirit. The Sons of Liberty, their hearts burning with determination, and led by the indomitable Samuel Adams, wove a network of resistance through boycotts and protests. Their decree rippled across the colonies like thunder. Not a single leaf of East India Company tea would touch American soil. From New York to Charleston, ships laden with the controversial cargo found no welcome harbor, a clear message written in the language of defiance. Liberty could not be purchased with discounted tea. But Boston's story took a different path. 3 ships, the Dartmouth, Eleanor, and Beaver, dropped anchor in the harbor. like three dark omens, their presence heavy with destiny. As royal officials demanded the cargo be unloaded, the colonists stood firm as granite. Each passing day pulled the tension tighter, like a violin string about to snap. Something had to give, and when it did, history would never be the same. The harborside city transformed into a powder keg of resistance, each day adding another spark to the inevitable explosion. Through tavern discussions, thick with pipe smoke, in church pews, where prayers mixed with politics, and across public squares, where winter winds carried whispers of rebellion, Boston prepared itself. The Sons of Liberty, led by the fiery triumvirate of Samuel Adams, John Hancock, and Paul Revere, orchestrated their resistance like master conductors. Their calls to action drew everyone from weather-worn farmers to wealthy merchants into their cause, each person adding their voice to the growing chorus of defiance. Within the Old South Meeting House, now a crucible of revolution, thousands gathered in the winter chill. Their breath rose like spirits in the cold air, their voices united in protest. Each resolution passed, each impassioned speech delivered, struck another blow against British authority. Yet even as Boston's resolve hardened like frost, time's merciless march continued. The British law loomed over them like a shadow. 20 days to unload the tea and pay its tax, or face seizure by force. The Sons of Liberty understood with crystal clarity, if the tax was paid, even under protest, the principle they fought for would crumble like autumn leaves. This standoff had transcended mere tea. It had become a crucible that would test whether the colonies would bow as subjects or rise as free people. The tension in colonial Boston grew thick as morning fog when Governor Thomas Hutchinson, steadfast as a lighthouse, refused to yield. Like a captain determined to weather a storm, he insisted the tea ships must unload their cargo, his resolve as unmovable as the granite beneath Boston's streets. In his mind, allowing the ships to depart would be like letting the tide flow backward, an admission that the will of the people could override royal decree. As Boston held its breath, the air crackled with anticipation, like the stillness before a summer storm breaks. Dawn painted the sky gray on December 16, 1773, as Boston teetered on history's edge. The tea ships, like sleeping giants in the harbor, had become a 20-day countdown to confrontation. Time was running out like sand through an hourglass. British law demanded the cargo be unloaded and taxed within that window, or face seizure. The stakes loomed as high as church steeples. If the tea touched shore, the colonists' principles would dissolve like sugar in warm water. The Old South Meeting House swelled with bodies like a beehive with bees that morning. Patriots trudged through winter's bite from miles around, their footsteps carrying them toward destiny. Inside, the air grew thick with breath and passion as Samuel Adams' voice, steady as a drum, guided the proceedings. Speakers rose and fell like waves against a shore, their words echoing off ancient timbers. Yet beneath the fire of rebellion, a current of uncertainty swirled. How to resist without igniting war's powder keg? As afternoon shadows lengthened, horsemen arrived with news that landed like stones. Hutchinson remained unmoved as Plymouth Rock. His decree stood firm: unload or face force. The crowd's anger rose like mercury in summer heat, yet Samuel Adams remained cool as December frost. His words fell like autumn leaves. This meeting can do nothing more to save the country. Simple words that carried the weight of revolution. A war cry pierced the gathering dusk like an arrow, the signal. Men transformed themselves with soot and feathers, not to deceive, but to declare. Their disguises weren't meant to fool. They were battle flags of defiance, announcing that Boston had found its answer. As night's velvet cloak settled over Boston, shadows began to move with purpose. These weren't soldiers or seasoned warriors, but ordinary men wrapped in blankets and determination. Their faces darkened like the night itself. Their costumes spoke not of deception, but of transformation, citizens becoming something wild and untamed. They converged on Griffin's wharf-like tributaries, joining a river, where the Dartmouth, Eleanor, and Beaver rested in the ink-black harbor. The winter air bit like a wolf, but these men moved with the precision of master craftsmen. No chaos, no disorder, just the quiet determination of men who knew their purpose. Armed with tools of rebellion, they swarmed the ships like ants on sugar. The few sailors present were gently but firmly set aside, witnesses to history rather than its victims. The sound of splintering wood mixed with the harbor's gentle lapping as chest after chest was split and emptied. The scent of T-342 chests worth rose like incense to the winter stars. From the wharf, colonists watched in reverent silence as their friends and neighbors rewrote history. Even the British guards stood frozen, perhaps sensing that to intervene would be like trying to hold back the tide. The raiders worked with monk-like discipline. No theft, no excess, no violence. Their target was symbolic, their message clear as church bells. When silence reclaimed the night, the harbor had become a vast, dark teapot, broken crates bobbing like autumn leaves on a pond. The smell of sea salt mingled with Ceylon's finest, creating a perfume of rebellion. The raiders melted away like morning mist, leaving no signatures but their deed. The harbor waters held their secret until dawn, when Boston woke to find history had been made in the night. This was no drunken riot or mindless destruction. It was rebellion distilled to its purest form, cold and calculated as a midnight tide. By sunrise, the news spread through Boston's streets like wildfire through dry timber. In taverns and shops, around breakfast tables and market stalls, the tale grew wings. Patriots' hearts swelled like sails in a fair wind, while loyalists' faces grew dark as storm clouds. The line had been crossed, bold as the tea-stained waters marking the harbor. In his mansion, Governor Hutchinson's rage blazed like a signal fire. This wasn't just about destroyed cargo. It was about authority as fragile as China, now shattered beyond repair. The British officials stood dumbfounded. They had prepared for the usual colonial tantrums, protests, boycotts, perhaps a riot. Instead, they had witnessed a precision strike that spoke of planning and purpose, a revolution dressed in feathers and darkness. Like a somber lullaby, picture the ships Dartmouth, Eleanor, and Beaver, their captains watching in helpless silence as their precious cargo melted into the dark waters below. The ledgers would record a staggering 10,000 pounds loss, but beneath those cold numbers lay something far more precious: shattered trust, broken loyalty, and the crumbling facade of British colonial rule. As the tea dissolved in the harbor's embrace, a deeper truth crystallized. Peaceful resistance had reached its twilight, and a new dawn approached. Boston stood ready, its spirit unwavering. When news drifted across the Atlantic like autumn leaves, it landed in London with the force of a winter storm. The British officials didn't see mere defiance. They saw rebellion blooming like a thorny rose. King George III's anger frosted the palace windows, while Parliament's fury echoed through ancient halls. Their response would be swift and severe, meant to serve as a chilling warning to all who dared challenge the crown. Like a master weaving a tapestry of punishment, Parliament crafted the intolerable acts. The Boston Port Act fell first, heavy as an executioner's axe, sealing the harbor that had been Boston's lifeblood. The once bustling port fell silent as a winter's night, trade withering like leaves in frost. The city's vibrant pulse slowed to a whisper as ships stood still, their sails limp in the quiet air. But Parliament's wrath, like a gathering storm, had only begun. The Massachusetts Government Act stripped away self-governance like bark from a tree. The Administration of Justice Act followed, shielding royal officials behind Britain's distant shores. British soldiers appeared in Boston's streets like unwelcome shadows, their presence a constant reminder of crown authority. The message floated through the air like winter frost. Rebellion would wither, liberty would fade. Yet, like a gardener who overprunes a tree, Parliament's harsh cuts produced unexpected growth. Their attempt to isolate Boston instead cultivated colonial unity. As sympathy and righteous anger sprouted throughout America like spring flowers after a harsh winter. Like gentle waves washing over Boston's shores, aid flowed in from sister colonies, wagons laden with food and supplies, letters of solidarity penned by candlelight, whispered meetings in tavern back rooms. What began as Boston's solitary stand against British might soon blossomed into something far more profound, the first stirrings of American unity. Britain's attempt to make Boston kneel had instead caused it to rise as a beacon of resistance, its flames of defiance spreading like starlight across colonial skies. The punishment of Boston rippled through the colonies like autumn wind through wheat fields, where once 13 separate entities had stood apart like trees in a scattered forest. Now unity took root, a force more potent than any British weapon. These colonies, long divided by faith, commerce, and custom, found common cause when Parliament's iron fist closed around Boston's throat. The message rang clear as a church bell. If Boston could fall, none were safe. Picture the scene. From Virginia's tobacco fields to Pennsylvania's rolling hills, from South Carolina's steamy ports to New Hampshire's rocky coast, a great awakening stirred. Wagons creaked under the weight of donated provisions. Town halls hummed with passionate debate, and printing presses churned through the night like tireless sentinels, spreading word of Boston's plight. The struggle had transformed, no longer one city's burden, but America's cause. As summer faded to autumn in 1774, history held its breath. In Philadelphia, the First Continental Congress assembled like stars aligning in a revolutionary constellation. 12 colonies sent their brightest minds. Washington, tall and resolute. Patrick Henry, fire in his words. The Adams cousins, sharp as New England winter. Together they stood, no longer mere colonial leaders, but architects of a dream, taking shape like morning mist, solidifying into dawn. Though independence wasn't yet their banner, beneath the surface of polite parliamentary procedure and careful petitions, a new understanding grew like spring flowers through winter snow. The colonies could no longer stand alone like separate candles in the dark. They must join their flames or risk being snuffed out one by one. Their response emerged clear as crystal, a unified boycott of British goods, mutual defense pacts, and the declaration that an attack on one was an attack on all. In every tavern and meeting house from coast to coast, Once whispered words now rose like smoke from a growing fire. Unity, resistance, liberty. Britain's hammer, meant to shatter rebellion, had instead forged something new and dangerous. A people who began to see themselves not as scattered subjects, but as Americans, bound together like links in an unbreakable chain. That night in Boston Harbor, when tea turned the waters dark as midnight, more than just cargo was lost to the depths. The illusion of colonial submission sank with those wooden crates, never to rise again. The Tea Party had planted a seed that would grow into a mighty tree of revolution, its roots too deep for any king or parliament to uproot. As winter gave way to spring, that seed sprouted into open defiance. Where once stood peaceful protests and polite petitions, now rose militia drills in town squares, storehouses filling with powder and shot like squirrels gathering for winter. And men who once raised loyal toasts now spoke of revolution in hushed, determined tones. Boston, though wounded, stood proud as a lighthouse in a storm. The harder Britain squeezed, the more resistance slipped through their fingers like grains of sand. Each vessel that passed Boston's silent harbor carried a message clear as dawn. Tyranny had met its match in colonial courage. Parliament's intolerable acts, intended to break Boston's spirit, instead crowned it with martyrdom. From Georgia's warm shores to New Hampshire's cold coast, colonists realized their destinies were interwoven like threads in a tapestry. This was no longer about tea or taxes. It was about survival, identity, and the precious flame of freedom. Like a gentle whisper from the past, tensions simmered beneath Boston's spring sky in 1775. In the quiet villages of Lexington and Concord, British redcoats marched with purpose, seeking colonial weapons. What they found instead were determined farmers, standing firm with muskets in hand, their breath visible in the crisp morning air. The first shots that pierced the dawn's silence would echo through history, shots that traced their origins to that fateful night when moonlit waters turned to tea. Picture yourself there, on that cold harbor night, as ordinary men chose the path of principle over prosperity. The Boston Tea Party wasn't just an act of defiance. It was a quiet revolution wrapped in darkness and determination. No trumpets announced its arrival. No banners waved in triumph. Just the soft splash of tea crates meeting dark waters and the whispered birth of a nation. Now, let your mind drift further back in time to a place where ancient wisdom slumbered beneath desert sands, before the first stone of the Great Pyramid found its place, before Mesopotamia's first city stirred to life, before Stonehenge reached for British skies. There stood Carroll. Like a forgotten dream in Peru's coastal valleys, this city rose 5,000 years ago, only to vanish like stardust into time's gentle embrace. The Soup Valley cradles this ancient secret, a place where nature seems to speak in whispers of hardship. Imagine a landscape painted in earth tones, where a slender river threads through sun-bleached rocks like a silver ribbon. At first glance, it appears as desolate as a dreamless sleep. Yet here, humanity wrote one of its earliest chapters. Close your eyes and see Carroll not as ruins, but as it once stood, a carefully planned metropolis spanning 150 acres, its pyramids rising like ancient guardians against the desert sky. Here, without the wheel to turn or metal to shape, without even written words to guide them, people achieved the extraordinary. Stone by stone, they built their dreams into reality, using nothing but shared purpose and the strength of human spirit. For millennia, Carol kept its secrets. Travelers would pass by, seeing only wind-sculpted hills where greatness once stood. None suspected that beneath their feet lay a city older than legend, its stories waiting to be discovered like precious gems in desert sands. Let your thoughts drift to the late 20th century when archaeologist Ruth Shady lifted time's veil. What emerged from the dust was more than artifacts and architecture. It was a revelation that rewrote history's first chapters. Carol had flourished and faded in perfect silence, and now its stones whisper tales of a peaceful people who crafted wonders in a land where even hope seemed impossible. Feel the harsh winds that sweep across endless dunes. Hear the sun-baked stones crack in the relentless heat. Water flows here like liquid gold, a precious thread of life in an ocean of sand. Yet the people of Carol saw beyond the barren surface, envisioning not a wasteland, but a canvas awaiting their touch. Watch as they transform this challenging landscape through wisdom and patience. See how they tamed seasonal floods with clever irrigation, coaxing life from resistant soil. Where others saw only emptiness, they grew gardens of cotton, beans, squash, guava, and sweet potatoes. Their cotton became treasure, woven into nets that would help feed generations. Marvel at how these ancient people mastered more than just the art of survival. They read nature's rhythms like a beloved book, building homes that embraced both scorching days and bitter nights. As you drift toward sleep, picture them studying the desert stars, their eyes reading celestial maps that would guide their harvests through the seasons. Like a precious thread woven through time, trade became the pulse of Carol's existence. Picture caravans of merchants moving along ancient paths, dried fish caught in coastal waters, cotton as soft as clouds, sweet fruits kissed by desert sun, and handcrafted treasures passed from skilled hands. From distant shores came glittering Pacific shells, while mysterious stones descended from misty Andean heights. Through quiet wisdom and gentle innovation, Carol didn't just survive. It whispered secrets of harmony to the harsh desert winds. They learned to dance with the dunes rather than fight them, reading nature's rhythms like a lullaby. Rising like dreams made solid, Carol's pyramids still murmur stories of ancient ingenuity. These weren't mere piles of stone, but monuments to human imagination, crafted by hands guided by starlight and vision. The Grand Pyramid Mayor stretched its arms 450 feet across the sand, reaching 60 feet toward the desert sky. A gentle giant among the world's ancient wonders, beckoning time travelers to rest in its cooling shade. Each stone tells a story of clever engineering. Pyramids born from desert rock, valley mud, and ingenious reed bags filled with Earth's treasures. Unlike their Egyptian cousins, built as eternal homes for the dead, Carol's pyramids pulsed with life, their broad staircases welcoming feet to temples and gathering spaces above. Below, circular plazas, cradled in Earth's embrace, hosted thousands, their voices rising like evening mist in celebration of life's endless dance. But perhaps most soothing to our modern souls is Carol's peaceful heart. No weapons lie buried in its sands, no walls stand guard against enemies, no echoes of battle disturb its ancient sleep. While other kingdoms wrote their stories in conquest's red ink, Carol painted its legacy in gentle strokes of trade and shared wisdom. Here, beneath stars that still shine as brightly as they did millennia ago, a civilization chose to build bridges instead of barriers. Their energy flowed not into weapons of war, but into temples of peace, astronomical dreams, musical whispers, and spaces where community bloomed like desert flowers after rain. These weren't monuments to victory over foes, but sanctuaries where celebration, worship, and governance twined together like branches reaching for light. Like a gentle breeze through time, Carol whispers tales of a civilization that chose wisdom over warfare, harmony over conquest. Picture their bustling marketplace, where cotton threads spun stories of connection. Delicate fishing nets, traded with coastal dwellers, brought not just dried fish for sustenance, but colorful shells that caught the desert sun like scattered gems. From high mountain passes came precious stones, while exotic fruits added sweetness to their peaceful prosperity. Drift deeper into this ancient dream, where the heartbeat of Carol echoes in grand plazas and sunken courtyards. Sacred rhythms filled the air as communities gathered under star-filled skies. Their spirits, united by melodies, carried on flutes carved from condor bones and drums that spoke with voices of deerhide. Each ceremony wove another thread in their tapestry of unity, guided by leaders who valued wisdom above weapons. Let your mind float to their achievements, where ingenuity danced with necessity. Without metal's cold gleam or the wheel's round wonder, they crafted a city that would outlast empires. Imagine watching as workers, clever as desert foxes, used simple reed bags to move massive stones, building pyramids that rose like dreams made solid against the shifting sands. Feel the gentle sway of their engineering wisdom as buildings embraced the earth's trembles instead of fighting them. Their structures flowed like water, with rounded corners and layered foundations that turned earthquake fury into harmless ripples. This wasn't knowledge learned from books, but wisdom earned through countless generations of listening to the land's whispered secrets. As your thoughts grow heavier with sleep, envision their mastery of desert waters. Like artists painting with liquid silver, they guided precious streams through channels and canals, coaxing life from sun-baked soil. Every drop was honored, every stream cherished in their dance with desert survival. In these final waking moments, see how they read the stars like a bedtime story, aligning their sacred spaces with heaven's eternal dance. Their sunken plazas weren't just gathering places. They were windows to the cosmos, where priests and stargazers unraveled time's mysteries, ensuring their community's rhythm matched nature's eternal song. Like a delicate tapestry woven through time, Carol's city planning whispered stories of sophisticated design. Streets and structures flowed together in perfect harmony. Homes nestled beside administrative buildings, while sacred spaces watched over all like gentle guardians. These ancient architects built not just for their own time, but dreamed of future generations walking these same paths. Modern engineers studying these ruins today find themselves humbled, reminded that true innovation lies not in technological advancement alone, but in the gentle art of dancing with nature's rhythms. Through countless seasons, Carol's weathered stones have stood witness to nature's fury, enduring storms, earthquakes, and time's persistent erosion. Each block and building tells tales of a civilization that dared to dream in stone and sand. For generations, Carol bloomed like a desert flower, its streets alive with music, trade, and architectural wonders. Yet, like a soft desert wind, its end came without violence or drama. No battles scarred its walls. No fires consumed its homes. No mass graves whispered of catastrophe. Instead, like a gentle sunset, Carol simply faded away. Its plazas growing quiet, its pyramids embracing the drifting sands, its beloved flutes and drums falling silent beneath time's patient hand. The mystery of their departure floats like evening mist across the soup valley. Some scholars suggest nature itself reshuffled the deck, a relentless drought slowly squeezing life from their carefully tended fields. As the life-giving river weakened, so too did their precious crops wither. The intricate web of trade, built on surplus cotton and food, began to unravel like a loosened thread. Others trace the story through changing trade winds. As new powers rose along distant shores and inland valleys, Carol's star began to dim their once precious goods. Cotton soft as clouds, fish from teeming waters, fresh valley produce no longer commanded the same value. Like sand through an hourglass, their commercial vitality slowly trickled away. A third whisper speaks of internal tides, without written records to guide us. We can only imagine the quiet struggles, political storms, spiritual doubts, or simply the wearing weight of centuries. Even the most peaceful garden needs constant tending, and survival's burden can eventually bend the strongest spirit. The end, when it came, was as gentle as falling leaves. Families drifted away like desert birds, seeking new waters, stronger rivers, fresher beginnings. Children who once played in Carol's sun-warmed plazas grew into adults who told tales of a magical city left behind, stories that, like stars at dawn, would slowly fade into legend's mist. Like grains of sand through an hourglass, time slowly veiled Carol's splendor. Nature's patient hands drew a blanket of desert over stone temples, while ancient flutes fell silent beneath golden dunes. This once vibrant metropolis, alive with the rhythm of daily life, transformed into a landscape of sleeping hills. For millennia, Carol slumbered, its secrets whispered only to the passing winds. As you drift closer to sleep, ponder this mystery. How could such a magnificent city, built with such wisdom and grace, fade so completely from memory? The answer lies in the delicate dance of civilization itself. Even the mightiest societies are like morning mist, beautiful but ephemeral, subject to time's gentle but relentless tide. Picture yourself walking through the Soup Valley long ago, where travelers passed by mysterious, rounded hills, never dreaming that beneath their feet lay ruins older than Egypt's great pyramids. These earthen mounds, sculpted by centuries of wind and weather, kept their secrets well. Then came a moment of awakening in our modern era. Let your mind follow Peruvian archaeologist Ruth Shady as she ventures into the valley in the 1990s. Drawn by an intuition that these silent hills harbored ancient stories, her discovery would revolutionize our understanding of human history. Imagine watching as each careful brushstroke reveals another wonder. First, a wall of precisely cut stone, then grand ceremonial staircases, followed by sunken plazas and majestic pyramids. When radiocarbon dating spoke its truth, the archaeological world held its breath. Carol had flourished over 4,600 years ago, contemporary with humanity's earliest civilizations in Mesopotamia and Egypt. This revelation gently shattered long-held beliefs about the cradle of American civilization. Before Carol, scholars had assumed that complex societies in the Americas bloomed much later than their Old World counterparts. But here was proof that the human spirit had reached equally magnificent heights on both sides of the world. As Carol's people crafted monumental architecture and intricate urban life long before the time of the Incas or Maya, like gentle whispers from the past. Ruth, Shady, and her team uncovered more than mere stone and earth. They discovered the heartbeat of an ancient world. Among the ruins lay precious treasures, delicate musical instruments that once carried melodies across desert winds, intricately woven fishing nets that danced with ocean catches, fine textiles that told stories through their threads, mysterious knot records holding ancient secrets, and sacred offerings left as whispered prayers to forgotten gods. Each discovery spoke of a people whose creativity flowed as freely as their sacred rivers. As you drift closer to sleep, imagine Carol's awakening, not just an archaeological triumph, but a tender reunion with time itself. After thousands of years beneath golden sands, this sleeping giant stirred once more beneath open skies, where ancient plaza stones still remember the echo of flutes and the soft patter of children's feet from millennia past. Let your mind wander through this UNESCO World Heritage Site, where each weathered stone forms a bridge between past and present. Though the desert veil had hidden Carol's face for countless generations, its spirit remained patient as the stars, waiting for the right moment to share its timeless wisdom. In your growing drowsiness, see Carol as it stands now, a sentinel of ancient knowledge, teaching us that our story reaches deeper into time's shadows than we ever imagined. Through its sun-warmed stones flows a different kind of history, not a tale of conquests and kings, but a gentle reminder of humanity's capacity for harmony and innovative spirit. As sleep draws near, picture this remarkable achievement. Before the first stones of Rome were laid, before Egyptian pyramids pierced the sky, Carol's people were weaving their dreams into reality. Without the wheel's aid, they raised monuments to touch the heavens. Without written words, they read stories in the stars. Through trade, music, ceremony, and clever engineering, they built something truly magical, a world where peace flourished without walls, where wisdom grew without warfare. In these final waking moments, let Carol's legacy wash over you. True greatness lies not in the clash of armies, but in the quiet strength of communities coming together to create, to share, and to dream beneath the same eternal stars. As your eyelids grow heavy, let me share how Carol's story whispers through time like a lullaby. This ancient city's influence flows beyond the quiet Soup Valley, gently washing away our old beliefs about civilization's birth. Like stars appearing in different corners of the night sky, we now know that human brilliance bloomed independently across our world. Carol stands as peaceful proof that the seeds of innovation and wonder took root in many soils, each flowering in its own unique way, yet all reaching toward the same timeless dreams of creation, celebration, and connection with the divine. Close your eyes and drift with me through Carol's hushed ruins. In that space between waking and dreaming, you might catch echoes of its past, the soft rhythm of ancient drums floating on the evening breeze, gentle flute melodies weaving through the air, the peaceful murmur of market day, conversations, and the distant laughter of children playing under a canopy of desert stars. These memories rest like precious gems in Earth's eternal embrace, waiting to share their stories. As sleep draws near, remember this soothing truth. Though great civilizations may fade like evening shadows, their wisdom never truly disappears. Like the stars hidden by daylight, they simply wait for the right moment to shine again. Carol glimmers in humanity's story, not just as a drowsy memory, but as a guiding light for tomorrow, showing us how even in life's harshest deserts, the gentle seeds of wonder, wisdom, and peace can take root, growing slowly but surely toward the stars above. Let this peaceful thought carry you into your dreams.